I'm Kelly Menson, the chef owner of Radio Bakery in New York City, and today we are going to make my perfect version of focaccia. We were just named by the New York Times one of the best bakeries in the United States. One of our specialties is focaccia. Focaccia is typically an airy, chewy, flat-ish loaf of bread. Thin crust, dark on the bottom, maybe a little bit oily, and can be eaten by itself or filled or topped. We're gonna make our sausage and chive focaccia. It's a 3-day process for us here. The first day we make the starter. The second day it gets mixed, proved, then put in the walk-in. And then the third day it gets proved again and then baked. First thing we're gonna do is mix our levain. A levain is an offshoot of your starter. A sourdough starter is just flour and water. It's what develops flavor and microbes and yeast. It eventually becomes active, and that is what's gonna help leaven our bread. So we're gonna use about 60 degrees Fahrenheit water because we want our levain to sit overnight. Room temp, we wanna keep it super cold. We're gonna do water first in the mixer so that none of the flour clumps up. All right. You can mix levain easily by hand, but we're making such a large batch that we're gonna do it in the mixer. If you can't make a starter, a lot of bakeries will give you a little bit of their starter that you can just use to create your own levain. Now we're making a video and I cannot have 20 people coming in here on a daily basis. I urge you to reach out to your other local bakeries and see if they can give you a little bit of their starter. And then we're gonna scale out our flours. We use King Arthur special patent bread flour for this dough because it's super high in protein. It's about 14% and it's really consistent. And for focaccia, we want high gluten. We want chewy, and we want the bread to be able to really expand. And that's what high protein bread flour allows us to do. Whole wheat and other specialty flours is what gives different breads its distinct flavor. Whole wheat flour also helps aid in the fermentation of our levain. Rule of thumb is the more whole wheat, the more whole grain flours you have in your bread or your levain, the faster it's gonna ferment. Now we're gonna go into our mixer. We're gonna let that mix. You can see it's nice and smooth. There's no dry lumps of flour. So this is the amount of levain for like 40 focaccias for tomorrow. I'm gonna pull a little bit out of it for the focaccia that we're gonna make in a little bit, but I'm doing production for my team. So we are gonna put this in our big Cambros. This is gonna grow double in size, so you do want enough room in your container. And now I'm gonna show you how to autolyse the dough. So we mixed our levain earlier in the day. He's been sitting at room temp, getting nice and active. Now we're gonna start mixing our dough, which will incorporate that starter. So we're gonna start with our autolyse. Big word, very simple. An autolyse is flour and water mixed together. You don't wanna go too hot because that's gonna speed up proofing and basically overproof your dough. You don't want to go too cold because then you will be sitting here waiting for the dough to proof for hours and hours and hours. At home, you may not have a thermometer, and that's totally okay. You want to go for room temp water. 77 degrees is our ideal temp. Things are constantly changing when it comes to bread, and you can't always catch that on a recipe. Even now, we have a little board over there where what water temp we want. It is what makes restaurant bakery bread different than home bread because we're really honing in on the details and the temperature and the time. What I'm actually gonna do is scale all the water in here, but then I'm gonna hold back, we say about 5%, and we're gonna add it to the dough later on, and it's gonna help incorporate the salt into the dough a little bit better. Now we're gonna scale our flour. This flour is the best. It develops gluten really easy. I'm just gonna go over to the mixer and mix. Whenever you're making any bread or dough, water in first. You could use a KitchenAid, but you could also absolutely do this by hand. That's how we developed it. We developed this recipe by hand in our New York City apartments. We're gonna let this go for about a minute. If you're doing this by hand at home, you really are just getting your hands in there and making sure you're mixing it until there's no dry flour spots. So this is what it looks like right after it's been mixed. If this dough is not mixed enough or doesn't get enough strength from all the folding, what you will really see is that your dough is super flat. We're gonna leave this for about 25 to 30 minutes, and that's really just to make sure that all the flour gets super hydrated. So timer is running for 30 minutes on our autolies for focaccia. While we're waiting on that, we're gonna scale out the other necessary ingredients for focaccia. We use fine sea salt. It has a higher sodium content than just kosher salt. People are gonna say that radio sourdough is not real sourdough because there's yeast in it, but we use less than 2% of yeast in all of our bread because a little bit of just instant active yeast makes sure that our dough is consistent every single day. Salt and yeast, I'm gonna put these with my water that I set aside. So I have everything ready to go. This dough has been auto-leasing for about 28 minutes now. And you can see how different the dough is. See how extensible that is? Just 30 minutes ago, it was like falling apart in my hand. And now it's super strong. And that's a really good sign. Now we're gonna add our small amount of yeast right on top. So our yeast is on there, and then we're gonna add our levain that was mixed earlier in the day and has been ripening for several hours, which is gonna give us flavor and a little bit of like sourdough tang, but it's also gonna help leaven it. We're gonna go for about 4 minutes, and this is just to help incorporate the yeast and the starter. We're not really developing gluten yet. We're gonna scrape it down because we wanna make sure we get every little bit incorporated into here. If there's any dry spots on the side, it's just gonna make for the dough that's not mixed very cohesively, and we want a nice, smooth, elastic dough. We're gonna start another 4 minutes. We're gonna slowly start adding the salt, and then we're gonna stream in the water. And the dough will actually break apart again while we add the water. If you're scared, if you feel like it's too sticky, leave a little bit water out. It'll make it easier to handle. The air bubbles might be a little bit smaller, but it'll taste great. This is the scary part, right? When people do this at home, the dough is completely coming apart. You just have to have faith. Just keep mixing. The dough just came out of the mixer. We're putting it in our bus tub. We're gonna give it a couple folds just to make sure it is all cohesive and even. It's already pretty strong. We're gonna put a lid on this. We're gonna set a timer for 30 minutes and then come back and give it another fold. We're going for 4 folds every 30 minutes to help develop gluten. After mixing, the dough has been resting for 30 minutes. If you're at home and you couldn't develop the gluten enough like we did in the mixer, the slap and fold is gonna be like really crucial to developing the gluten. It has relaxed and really spread out in the bus tub. I'm gonna spin it, get my hands in water again, pull, pull, pull. The dough is in this like nice cohesive mass, and it's back to being a strong little packet. So we're gonna put a lid on this, give it another 30 minutes, and basically give it 3 more folds. So by your last fold, you wanna be a little bit more gentle. So that is our last slap and fold. Now we're gonna put the lid on. It's gonna increase in size, take over the container before we shape it. This is my favorite part of making bread. This has been proofing for about 3 hours. What we're looking for now is that the dough fills the bin, and not only does it fill the bin, but there's some tension and rounding of it on the sides of the bin. We're gonna shape. As I mentioned, this is a very, very sticky dough. The best way to work with it is with lots of water on your hands. We use these special pans. They're called Lloyd pans. They're basically deep dish style pizza pans. They're amazing. They conduct heat very well. And I just have like a fine layer of oil in here. It should be enough to coat the bottom so that it doesn't stick to the pan. I'm gonna get my hands a little wet. This means that the dough is nice and strong. You can see it holding onto itself. If it doesn't have any tension, or if it's moving all over the table, it could be a sign that it doesn't have enough strength and therefore might not have enough rise in the oven. For this looks amazing and I'm really happy for it. This is a good tip for proofing dough or your starter. If you put the dough in water and it floats, that means there's enough air in there and that it's perfectly proofed. We have since learned, we like to give it a little bit of stitching. This helps with creating some tension in the dough, and it helps with the rise. This dough likes to be told what to do. And so we give it a little boost. And I'm making it into a nice little packet. I'm gonna press this packet out a little bit. What we're really looking for is just an even amount of dough in the pan. Everyone likes their focaccia differently. So if you want a super thick focaccia, go for it. Fill the pan up. I mean, it might explode when it's proofing, but that's what it's all about. We have just divided and shaped our focaccia. Now we're gonna put it on our speed rack with the rest of our focaccias that we did earlier in the day, and we're gonna let it sit for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. This helps relax the dough, proof it a little bit more. It's been about 2 hours. The focaccia is basically touching the lid of the pan. You can see there's some air bubbles happening here, and it's super relaxed. We're gonna put the bread in the walk-in overnight. What we really want is to just cool it down and stop the proofing so that we can come in tomorrow and then bake it fresh. If you wanted to shorten this, you could proof it for a little bit longer and bake it immediately. We have done that, but since we're in a bakery setting, this is what works for our schedule. These are the focaccias that we shaped yesterday. They went in the walk-in overnight just to chill. Typically, we would pull these out at 5 a.m. when my bakers come in the morning, and they should look cold. There's still lots of air in them, but they're really cold and tight. If I was at home and I had focaccia in the walk-in, I would just pull it out first thing in the morning, later in the afternoon, let it sit at ambient temp for 2, 3, 4 hours. It's not gonna overproof. What you are really looking for is for it to just equalize in temperature. I'm just really trying to stretch it to fill the pan so that it stays nice and square, because this is gonna become 10 sandwiches or 8 pieces of focaccia, and we wanna make sure that everyone has a nice equal piece. Bubbles are starting to form. This is what we're looking for, and this is what we mean by proofing. This means our dough is very active, and we call this a happy dough. We're gonna pop them in the proofer to just heat them up to ambient temp. If you're making these at home, I would recommend covering it with a towel or plastic wrap. This is our proofer retarder. It's a very magical piece of equipment. It's just a box that can pump humidity and keep a solid temperature. These are going in at 28 degrees Celsius and like 85% humidity. The humidity just makes sure that nothing is gonna crust over. If something crusts over, then it can't expand. We're just gonna quickly proof this for about an hour, let it relax. We'll see some more bubbles and we'll come back to it later. Our focaccia has been proofing for a little bit over an hour in our proofer. We have like an ever rotating focaccia toppings. We have a sausage and chive, a olive and grape and rosemary, and then we always have a tomato focaccia. With the sausage and chive focaccia, we're really going for like creamy, crunchy, fatty, and then like fresh oniony chives. It's just like the perfect combination of textures and flavors that it really hits all the right notes. Now we're gonna make our sausage and chive focaccia. We're gonna go just straight up creme fraiche first. Creme fraiche has a high heat tolerance, so it's not gonna break when exposed to heat. Sour cream will break when it's exposed to high heat. Now we're gonna add our sausage, which is bacon trimmings, prosciutto trimmings, a little smoky, a little fatty. I'm gonna add a little bit of our good olive oil, and then we're gonna dock it. This is called golden Nana olive oil. It is buttery and light and bright. The dimpling is really important because we wanna make sure that we are spacing the air bubbles out evenly, and don't be afraid to touch the bottom of the pan. One confident dock. The more you dock, the more you're gonna knock out air. We're gonna put this in our deck oven. These are gonna bake for about 15 to 18 minutes until they're super toasty on the bottom and evenly brown on top. The deck oven is super special because it has stones on the bottom that's gonna help regulate the heat and really make sure that the bottom of this gets nice and toasty. You can absolutely make this at home in your home oven. If you have a pizza stone, that is a great start. So we are baking these at 550. The bottom stones are at 100% heat, and then we have it on 50% heat on top, and we found that that creates like the nice perfect golden crust. The most important thing is you want to bake it hot and fast. Okay, we're gonna pull her out. This has been about 15 minutes. The sausage and chive, the bottom goes really quick because there's so much fat coming down from the bacon and stuff, and so it really helps with like the crustiness. It's literally frying in the fat and olive oil. It smells like bacon in here. We're gonna check the bottom, like dark golden brown. That's great. We're gonna put this here. This gets finished with lots of chives, and that's gonna give it its fresh, oniony flavor and help cut the fat of the bacon and the creme fraiche. We're gonna do a little bit more olive oil. Some guests love the burnt crusty ends. Some guests prefer the middle. Everyone gets what they want out of this. We're looking for, there's some nice, beautiful air pockets. We've got little buckets of creme fraiche and our sausage, and then the bottom is just super, super crisp and golden brown, and that's the perfect one. Eating this focaccia hot out of the oven is like one of the best things you could eat here. Fatty from the bacon, the creme fraiche, slightly greasy. We love little greasy fingers. Super crunchy on the bottom, and then like fresh and oniony from the chives. Hits all the notes. People often ask us, why do you sell it so early? We are a very small bakery, and this is a 3-day process to make our focaccia. Ours is so unique because of the time and effort that goes into it.